Right, that's live. Coming out from behind the blue wall. Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today,
And today, we're going to talk about E3.
I guess
Oh,
you're gonna take
fuck.
it from me. All right
Oh,
then,
yeah, I'm sorry.
it's
You did it.
fine.
Yeah. Oh.
It, it's fair. I for like maybe like the 30th or 40th time started the podcast in the middle of you taking a sip. So you know.
Honestly, we got there. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's got there.
yeah. Before we do that, buddy, why don't you the folks know what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we talk about games. And because over the weekend, so E3 theoretically happens over the weekend, right? And that includes, but it is bigger than that, right? Like that includes stuff that happened outside of the context of
So
real.
this is funny, right? Like everybody assumes that, but like for the past 5 years at least, it's not actually E3 that I hope it happens over the weekend, but that's when the announcement happened, right? Because that's when all the shows are.
Oh, really?
Like, because I think E3 technically starts on like I think E3 is technically this week, right?
This is
Because
so weird because I have worked E3.
right, because like
And I honestly don't really remember the details.
like the opening show, like the the Game Awards spin-off show, like that's technically pre E3. The Devolver show is technically pre E3. I'm pretty sure the Xbox show is no, the Xbox show might have been technically during and the Nintendo show today was during E3. Which is why we did
Okay.
this today, is because the Nintendo show is today.
Yeah,
Um,
so we now have basically all of the big giant news that has come out from you know, most of the spheres of gaming. I think the big not present here is like a Sony, PlayStation, right? Like we have bits from other places about Sony, but I didn't get the sense that Sony itself, like Microsoft did, right? Made a big announcement. But I also was not paying attention to the actual broadcasts themselves. I was mostly just picking up trailers and stuff as they released as the news came out. So I guess I could be wrong about that.
no, I'm pretty sure Sony this year does not have its own show. I think this is also true. Uh, Not last year because last year didn't happen,
Oh
but
yeah,
the year
well because
before.
they had a whole bunch of that was a big deal, that them pulling out of E3. I actually remember that being like a news story at the time.
Well, the big news story was they pulled out of PAX East, which you and I were at.
Oh yeah, that's also true.
Right on the brink of the pandemic, which
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
uh,
Okay, so obviously there's a lot of news. Where do you want to start? What's the most like
um.
important bit?
Oh man. Well, I guess. I guess we start maybe with that Jeff Keighley show, just because it was the first big one. I think
Okay.
Devolver was technically before, or it might have been. I watched them. So we didn't broadcast last week because I was on vacation, so I was watching all these after the fact. Um, but the Jeff Keighley show, which I'm gonna call Jeff Keighley show, even though it's got a real name. It's a hyper.
The real name is the Summer Games Fest, which we were
Right.
actually in
Ah.
two spots. Though I won't, we don't have to obviously dwell on that because it's like promotional or whatever. Like maybe I'll talk about it at the end. But yeah. So the big one there was Elden Ring, right?
Yes.
Was the new FromSoft game Elden Ring, which they said something about George R. R. Martin, but to be honest, this really just looked like a FromSoft game as far as I was concerned. Uh,
Apparently, he's like he like worked on the story with it, which who knows, right? Like, if he did, he was doing that instead of Winds of Winter, right? Like that's the one that he hasn't finished yet. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it looks like Dark Souls 4, right? Or like,
yeah.
but that's kind of their modus operandi. I have heard uh rumors that they may have done Elden Ring as a separate IP because I think it's whoever the publisher is, it's either Tecmo Koei or Bandai Namco,
I
uh,
think.
owns part of the copyright in the name Dark Souls.
I
So
have also heard that actually, that there is never going to be a Dark Souls 4 because of contract stuff. I don't remember where I saw this. To be honest, this is not news. This is
right,
just speculation. Like I think I saw this. Like, it was like the most upvoted comment on like a Reddit post like 6 months ago or something. But they said that because Dark Souls took off so hard, they had worse. Like they had like a worse deal for the Dark Souls series than they would be able to get now because they're so famous and like
right. I mean,
pioneered this whole genre.
this is the
So.
second time it happened too, right? Because like there's been no Demon Souls 2 because Sony owns all of Demon Souls, right? Like that's why the Demon Souls remake
Oh, I didn't
was done by
actually
Blue
know that
Point.
either.
Yeah.
But yeah, because somebody was like, "Oh, I can't believe they're making." Because the point was the samurai one. This was around the samurai one. Neo that came
Sekiro.
last year.
Sekiro.
Oh, Sekiro.
Yeah, Neo
Sorry.
is
Yeah, yeah,
by
yeah.
Team Ninja. who also had an
Okay,
announcement.
yeah. So it was when Sekiro came out, where people were like, "Where's Dark Souls 4?" And I read a Reddit comment that was like, "There's not gonna be a Dark Souls 4, you guys."
Yeah. So they've said that they're not going to do a Dark Souls 4, but I don't think they've said because of copyright stuff. But like it's this is it's a stepping stone, right? Sony owns all of Demon Souls, which is why Bluepoint did the remaster. Um, I what did you say it was? Tecmo Koei owns like half of Dark Souls.
Well,
Um,
so Bandai is
oh, is it Ben?
publishing this one. So if it's Bandai for both, it might be Tecmo Koei for Demon Souls or Dark Souls. I actually don't know
Yeah,
the answer, but
we can figure this out. This is knowable things. It's Bandai
this is
Namco.
attainable information.
Yeah. But funnily, I put in Dark Souls into Google and it said Bandai Namco Souls series. So that's your answer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so Elden Ring, I guess it definitely just looks like more of the same. Is there anything in Elden Ring? It seems like mounted combat was the thing that I saw people talking about that was different or new or exciting. But I don't have a good sense of this because I've never played like any of these games really.
yeah. So the mounted combat's definitely different. There was an interview that I haven't read myself yet, but I've heard summarized with Miyazaki, which apparently has much more content in it. But also it's kind of like Breath of the Wild in that it's open world, but on the edges there are like 6 dungeons to go through that you can go through in any order, which is basically the Breath of the Wild. In terms of structure, there's also apparently like smaller but significant changes. Like fall damage is historically pretty brutal in Dark Souls, and they tone that down. That way, you don't have to worry about like you can explore without being as fearful. Apparently, you can't mount up in multiplayer, various stuff like that. But you know, honestly, it being like an open world ish Dark Souls is enough for people who get like that's enough to get me excited, right? Like screw Jar Jar Martin, right? Like but
Yeah.
um, not that that's a negative point. Just like I if they hadn't been like Dark Souls 4, I would have been happy, right? And the people
Really, the selling point here is the From Software is making a new Souls-like game, right?
yes,
Like,
yes, yeah, no, and and other people have done decent Souls like games, but nothing kind of quite hits the same way that Dark Souls. Um, even you ask people, some of the Dark Souls games don't hit like Dark Souls does. So
yeah, I mean, everybody hates Dark Souls 2. I
yeah,
always see discourse about Dark Souls 2, whether it's good, whether it's bad.
yeah.
You know.
And part of that is like less the direct mechanics, but like Dark Souls 2 is a lot more linear. It's like it's I think it's spoken hub. I think it's the term. I haven't played Dark Souls 2 myself. I've only played 1 and 3. Apparently, Demon Souls was also very spoken hub, which I haven't played, but I've watched a full playthrough of. So I can attest to that. But yeah, people are excited about this one also because it seems to be like basically taking the best elements of the spoken hub model with the exterior worlds, but also the interconnected stuff that made Dark Souls 1 really cool. So the big thing that makes Dark Souls 1 really cool that they don't even fully replicate in Dark Souls 3 is that you kind of start exploring and then you'll open a door and you'll be like, oh, that's where that is. I know where I am, and you can like walk back to where you've been because historically there's no map, right?
Yeah.
Apparently there will be a map in this game, which probably pissed off some purists somewhere, but yeah.
Other big announcements from this one, Jurassic World Evolution 2. Did you ever play Jurassic World Evolution? Do you have any
Nope.
insight into that series?
No.
It's like a management sim where you build your own Jurassic Park, which I always thought was ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like it's like making I don't know, what's a good example of this? It's like making a heist game out of Die Hard. You know what I mean? Like the point of the game is that you shouldn't make, or the point of the movies and the book is that you should not make a park out of it. And then they turned it into a fucking park simulator. But I've actually heard that the park simulator is pretty good and pretty funny because one of the things it does is kind of anti-hold your hand in a way that is in keeping with those themes a little bit. So like the tutorial will coach you on how to like put animals and things, but there's like a lot of hidden mechanics to stuff, right? So like if you put a Tyrannosaurus in an enclosure with a Triceratops, it's gonna fucking kill the Triceratops and eat it. And so the game like constantly coaches you into sort of failure states, which I think is a really interesting sort of concept. Though it's not quite as dire as I'm making out to be. Like, I feel like there's sort of a frustrating way that is done, and it is a much more minor thing, right? Because like it's encouraging you to, kind of cut corners or whatever in ways that will sort of balloon and snowball into kind of failure. So I'm very interested by this choice to make a second one. I feel like there has been a huge undercurrent for these sorts of simulation strategy, kind of management games. And but they never get like the big headline. So I was surprised to see that, in the Summer Games Fest showcase.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, part of it too is that it was led off by Jeff Goldblum, right? Like
Mm.
the Games Award associated shows always have like, like you could like the tones of all these. So you didn't watch any of the shows, but I like watching the shows just because they all have their unique tones, right? Like Summer Games Fest ones are, it has a bunch of celebrities that kind of don't belong there, and then Jeff Keighley fanboys over Hideo Kojima, which happened this time as well. Hideo Kojima comes out, apologizes for, like, as if he caused COVID to happen, apologizes for Death Stranding for being too real too soon, and then says twice, I'm going to have to rethink how I make games because this is just like 9/11. Because right after 9/11, he releases Metal Gear 2, where like a big ship crashes into New York City, and then he had to edit that at the last minute.
Well, speaking of Hideo Kojima, he also released Death Stranding director's cut. I watched this trailer and I did not understand what was different between it and the regular Death Stranding. So
Yeah, so we
that
don't we don't know what's different yet, or at least as far as like the trailer. The thing that was the trailer was Death Stranding aping Metal Gear Solid, right? Like that whole thing was, that's not Death Stranding. That's like, like the box is all classic Metal. It's an in joke, right?
Oh, I get it. Okay. See, I also haven't played Metal Gear Solid, so that
Yeah,
flew over my head.
yeah, yeah. So as far as I know, we don't know what the director's cut is. He might have said something afterwards, but that trailer did not indicate what the director's cut would be. My favorite, like I saw a hot take on Twitter that was like, Death Stranding is the most unfiltered game out there. How is there any filter left to take away? Right? Yeah. So but yeah, so what else was there? There were a couple other big announcements. Oh, so Metal Slug Tactics stuck out to me just because I thought that was a neat way to bring back Metal Slug. Basically, Metal Slug is the classic kind of side-scrolling shooter brawler almost. It's like Streets of Rage but with guns almost. But they're turning it into like a grid-based tactics game, which is a very cool way I think to bring it back.
That seems kind of perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that absolutely.
Um.
Now that I'm taking a look at this revealed trailer.
Uh.
Yeah, Metal Slug I always think of like Metal Slug just has like a very iconic aesthetic with those like just big chunky pixelated, like over the top like tanks and shit. Um so it definitely makes for a cool tactics game, it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other, like to your point about simulation games, a game that's got mentioned like 3 or 4 times in the shows I watched is Two Point Campus, which I don't care about at all. But it's a campus simulation game. There are a handful of these that like you said, that the simulation games are pretty popular. I think they're kind of like coming into the forefront, especially because I think part of it is that they're not like, it's not that they're not hard to do, it's that the interface elements at least aren't super hard to do, right? Like they're it's
Mm.
um
Yeah, I also just don't think that they're very stressful, which people, like
yeah.
get, and there's also a certain I almost sort of think Stellaris it counts in this category because to a certain extent it's just satisfying to watch number go up,
Mm,
you know, and that's kind of what it boils down to sometimes. Is oh, number goes up? Oh, do more thing to make number go even more up? Sure, yeah, absolutely. Like
yeah. Uh and what else is there? Um oh yeah, so did you have opinions on, what was this game? Back 4 Blood. which is do you
Oh
play a lot of
yeah,
Left 4 Dead?
the Left 4 Dead game. I
Yeah.
thought this looked sweet. I had seen this before, but the bigger focus on it that I ended up seeing made me more hyped, because this is like, I sort of missed Left 4 Dead, right? It is in a genre that I like. I like these sort of horde PvE shooters, right? Like obviously we did a whole cast on Killing Floor. I've talked about Payday, right, and how much time I put into Payday 2. And Back 4 Blood is an interesting case because it is sort of like, one of the big things is that it's from the makers of Left 4 Dead, right? And it is under like kind of like underwritten by a classic or like nostalgia kind of vibe, which I think is neat. But like this seems like a very modern genre to me, right? Like what was the first kind of horde shooter? I feel like it was just Left 4 Dead, and that was like, 10 or 15 years ago. So I liked Back 4 Blood. I thought Back 4 Blood looked very cool.
Yeah.
They did their thing this weekend was a PvP thing, the Swarm, whatever they called it, Swarm mode.
Wait, PV. Wasn't that a feature in the original Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2 maybe? Right? Like
Might have been. I do
like
not know.
I think you could
But
play as the zombies like in that. Maybe not in the same thing, but I remember seeing that being like, isn't this just parody with like, because it's not Left 4 Dead 3 because I think that IP is owned by Valve, but
yeah.
it is. um
Yeah, I
yeah
mean, I don't know. I actually don't know offhand. Really, I like this game in theory. I don't really know how much I care about this
yeah
PvP mode,
fair
right?
enough.
This Swarm mode. But this was the thing that was announced at E3.
Yeah.
Was there.
Yeah. Oh, and so I think the weirdest announcement at the show was the Deviation Studios announcement. Did you follow this at all?
Oh, I know Deviation Studios because Deviation Games, you mean?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, so Deviation Games, one of it's former Call of Duty devs and former Blizzard devs. Like the guy, like the head writer on WoW for a long time is like the creative director at Deviation Studios. And I think and he moved to the Hearthstone team, and that's where I knew him from. I knew him because he was doing Hearthstone stuff. And it popped up on my Twitter feed because I think I was still following him even though he had moved off of Hearthstone
Right.
and wasn't tweeting about Hearthstone anymore. And he just tweeted out this thing, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I have no idea what it's doing. They just said that they're working with PlayStation, so
Yeah, that's why this announcement was so weird, right? It was like
yeah.
Deviation Studios, we exist and we're working with PlayStation, and at the moment everybody was like, yeah, and they're a game, and there's no game, just like, yeah, we exist, we're former,
Yep.
we're talent, and we're working with Sony, which might be the biggest Sony announcement of the show, honestly.
I mean, probably.
They didn't have a huge presence at the
Um,
show.
there's some other stuff that came out in other spots, right? So also on Friday, but I think it was in a different thing, was the Vampire the Masquerade Swan song trailer. Did you see this?
Right? Yes, I did.
I don't understand this trailer that much because my understanding is that like it is following on a game that I guess I just never played. Um, but I don't know. The trailer was cute. It was
Yeah.
neat.
So do we want to move to a different show then?
Yeah, sure.
So I'll let you pick next. Devolver Digital or Xbox?
Let's do Devolver.
Okay, Devolver should be short because most of the attraction of the Devolver show is the show. Like, it is the one show to watch for the show and not for the announcement.
Yeah, because it's just a gigantic shitpost.
Yeah. Although I think it's so. So I was bringing this up in one of our private chats, but I wonder how long until this shtick wears thin, because like they make this big joke about like the abuses of the game industry, but then they proceed to like the joke was that in the old shows like you throw your money at the screen and Devolver will magically get it. That's not real, right? But like some of the stuff they did is real, right? Like they released a suit and a VHS tape. A VHS tape is like non-fuckable with tape, right? Which is an NFT joke, right? And they both sold. Like the NFT sold, the tape sold for like $1,000, and the suits sold out at like $500 a pop. And they were making fun of like the monetization on this mobile game, right? But it appears that game is coming out, and like they made a joke about like physical only releases, and I think that game's physical only release. So at what point
Yeah,
is it not ironic anymore?
I also saw like the big thing is, Devolver is kind of morphing into a more traditional publisher, right? Over time, right? So like when the Devolver Digital was first starting out, they were like a true bottom indie game sort of publisher, right? But they have been scaling kind of upwards over the past
Right.
couple of years. I mean, in no small part, I'm sure, because these are big like big shows, and they get
Yeah.
a lot of press off of them, right? But like they published Fall Guys. Fall Guys has a season pass. Like that's how, where's the line between Fall Guys as a AAA game and Devolver, right? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, though I will say, by the way, Fall Guys did get sniped from Devolver, so I don't think they are technically still publishing Fall Guys, because the Fall Guys studio, didn't they get bought by Epic? Um,
They
so
might have, yeah. I mean, I
I,
don't know I don't know what the publishing agreement is there, but yeah,
yeah, I have no idea either. But like that's just like the example in my mind, right? Like as Devolver kind of gets more and more legitimate, right? Um, where do they when do they lose being able to parody this stuff, right?
yeah,
I saw a lot of discourse about like what is the line between an indie game, right, and like a AAA or like a AA game, right? Because lots of folks were talking about indie games that, and obviously like I'm on indie game Twitter and I see what indie game devs talk about on indie game Twitter, and like, look, I understand that people might think certain of these titles are indies, but really they are AAA games that are just lower. Really like AA games, I would call them,
right.
right?
Like
But
Shadow
like nobody
Warrior,
ever
right?
wants to be a AA game. They want to
Right.
be an indie game.
Right. Yeah. You either
Um,
want to be an indie game or you want to be a AAA game. Being AA is kind of like what, but that's like
yeah, so
kind of
like
like
you have a game with a development studio, right, with 50 to 100 people and a budget of $10 million, but that's an indie game. It's like what are you talking about? An indie game is made by like 10 or less people, please. Like,
yeah. I
come on.
mean, I think I mostly agree with you there. I don't know. I think there's room. Like I think I could see situations where like if it's like less a concerted development effort and more community project where you could have more developers
Yeah.
that when. But I take your point, right? Like I think to your point, Devolver publishes a variety of things. And I think Shadow Warrior 3 falls pretty squarely into AA, right? Like
Oh yeah, that's a great example of a Devolver game that is a legitimate, right? Like
yeah.
that I would never call Shadow Warrior an indie game.
Yeah, but like Wizard with a Gun and Inscription, which are also games that I think look super awesome. The other games they announced I think look really cool, but they mostly fall squarely um into indie game territory to me at least. Um,
Yeah.
the only other thing, so the big joke of this show, which I also thought was a little bit flatter than the previous ones, not because it wasn't a clever idea, but just because like to the point of like where the line is, right? Like, the joke was monetization as a service, and basically you can go get their game. Like the joke is you get the Devolver Max Pass Plus, and it's totally free, but you have to buy the games, right? Like, so it's like basically the pass is meaningless, which is less biting than it usually than the criticism usually is. Like, I feel like the truer version of this would be like you actually go and pay for it, right? And like then you don't actually get anything out of it. Which I don't know why. Like, I don't quite know why that was tempered so much. Also, on the other hand, like the other part of this too is like I actually think the Xbox Game Pass is pretty good deal. Like I don't think that's like a thing to satirize, right? Like I think it's actually a good deal, right? Like
Yeah, I also agree with you. And it honestly kind of got upstaged because the Xbox, I mean, I guess to transition a little,
yeah,
the Xbox Game Pass continues to be an even better deal with the announcements that they made at the Microsoft show,
yeah,
right? Where it is getting like the like day one real titles that I would really want to go out and play, and I'm just like, wow, that is awesome. That is really good. And I don't know. It really felt like in an overall sense, Microsoft was very ahead of the curve in this
yeah. I think
in this presentation.
just to lay it on the table, I think the best presentation. Like Xbox / Bethesda is either the best or the second best. Kind of like flip flop tied with Nintendo, and Nintendo is all about content and which is fine, but like it's like that's kind of whatever. Like the Xbox kind of like a full vision, I think was much more impressive, right? Like Game Pass everywhere, right? Like I don't think anything's exclusive to the consoles, right? Like everything that's coming out on Game Pass, if you have Ultimate, you can play on your computer, right? Which is great for us. I don't know how that figures into their long-term vision about like console adoption, since obviously there's less of a reason to get like an Xbox Series X if you do that.
Yeah, I watched in real time. Like, I felt like I was watching a nature documentary, and it was a PlayStation fanboy and an Xbox fanboy like going at it at Twitter, and I watched like their replies back and forth. And I read this whole thread, and one of the things that I thought was very interesting that the Microsoft guy made, like the point that the Microsoft guy made, is that because the PlayStation guy was like, nobody owns a fucking Xbox, like because it's a shitty console, right? Everybody owns PS5, and PS5 has all the good exclusives. And the Microsoft guy was like, yeah, that's kind of the point, because people play the good Xbox games like Outer World on their PC and on the Xbox. So if you want to do it on a console, you can. If you want to do it on your PC, you can. You're just being a dick by like hoarding these games to yourselves or whatever, which obviously is like a shitty argument for a variety of reasons. But it was kind of a neat sort of point that, like, yeah, I do sort of think that part of the reason that it feels like Microsoft is a little ahead of the game when it comes to the Game Pass is the cross promotion between console and PC, right? Like, I don't think of Outer Worlds as an Xbox exclusive, but it sort of was in a sense, and it's coming to Game Pass is the way that I played it, so I think of it as a PC game, right? And I feel like that's probably going to hold true for Starfield, for Outer Worlds 2, for what was the other stuff they announced? Halo, obviously, Halo Infinite. I also saw a lot of discourse about that, by the way, which we can talk about. But yeah, so
yeah, let's go through some of the Bethesda / Xbox announcements, because they're like I said, this and the Nintendo one I think are like the big meaty ones besides the ones we've talked about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the big one at the top is Starfield, right? Starfield's not going to be on PlayStation, right? Which is like that's like the two biggest things about the Starfield announcement are, one, it's not going to be on PlayStation, and two, at the very beginning of the video, it says pre-alpha footage, creation engine 2, which means it's a new engine. Like, that's like literally the most significant thing in the whole trailer, at least to me, right? That they're finally upgrading the fucking engine. Whatever fucking Faustian bargain they made to fucking put out Fallout 76 got them whatever money they needed to
Fair, that is very fair. It was nice to see Creation Engine 2. I do agree. I also think that, this is really where Microsoft wanted. I think it was in the fucking terms of like Microsoft buying Bethesda that they were like, you have to talk about Starfield. We have to show this game. It was announced in 2017, 4 years ago. Like, we can't not talk about this a little bit. And even then, it honestly was not. You didn't see any combat. You didn't see any gameplay. You just sort of saw.
Well, you saw the prologue to the game, right? Like, because like it's him getting into the spaceship to go do the game. Is my understanding, right?
And I do like the tone. Though, to be honest, it's funny because I've been playing a little bit of No Man's Sky, which we can talk about in the back half. I've been playing a little bit of No Man's Sky, and so this definitely feels a little bit like, you guys missed your window. If I want to play this game, I'll just play fucking No Man's Sky, dudes. But they say that it's or it's not Fallout in space, Skyrim in space specifically, which I'm interested by. It definitely is in that same vein of like, Mass Effect Andromeda was this. We've talked about the Star Wars thing of like, you're in your ship and you're exploring the galaxy with like your buds, right? Outer Worlds was also this. Which is just like a tried and true genre, which I thought was really interesting. Something that I almost thought was weird and dissonant in all of the stuff is that I got a very hard science, like almost like NASA,
Yeah.
understanding of of space from this. Like there's a lot of like exposed circuitry and stuff like that, and the way that like the control panel works, and the way that like the bolts on the starship were all like riveted, riveted in. It just really gave me like a much more tactile feel compared to the sort of like playing Mass Effect, for instance. Like Mass Effect has a very sterile sort of like plastic sort of like action figure version of space, right? It is not really trying to sell me on like a realistic version of space. It's trying to sell me on a fantastical version of space where people have biotic superpowers and holographic
Right.
wristwatch orange things or
Or
whatever.
at least we're
The
advanced enough.
language.
Or at least we're advanced enough that like we can have aesthetics in space instead of just like function in space. This is still
Yeah,
very
yeah,
much
yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah,
function
yeah.
in space.
The aesthetics of the trailer gave me that functions in space, but all of the words that they used gave me the sort of fantasy in space, right? He talked about it being a very Star Wars story, or I'm sorry, Todd Howard. Like I read an interview with Todd Howard where he was like, "Oh, this is a very Star Wars story. It's a Han Solo story. You get in your ship and you go and explore the galaxy." And it's like like when I think of Star Wars, when I think of Han Solo, I don't think of like exploring the final frontier, I guess. I think of a lived in sort
Yeah.
of established galaxy, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but I don't know. There just wasn't
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see more. Right, like it's fall of next year,
Yeah,
which will be impressive. Like I kind of that's a date that I think might slip, which whatever. But
especially this far out. I mean, Jesus, like it is more than a year out. It's very easy for dates like that to slip. Like just the nature of polish and builds and bugs and stuff like that. It's so hard to estimate how much that will affect your launch date.
yeah, no, and who knows what the tail end of COVID looks like even, right? Like how much
Yeah,
uh,
obviously. I mean, like, one of the things that I saw people complaining about was how some of the announcements felt very flat. Like Square Enix had a bad showing. Apparently, they announced one game, this Guardians of the Galaxy
well,
game.
they announced two. They,
What was the
well,
second one?
they announced several, but do we want to wait to go to that show?
Sure. Yeah, we can wait. But
Yeah,
I just mean that like there's sort of like a discontent about some of the announcements, right? Like Microsoft, Nintendo, they hit it off, right?
yeah,
Like the game show with Jeff Keighley in the beginning, like, that stuff is always going to do well because it's a big hodgepodge of a bunch of different people. There's a bunch of indies mixed in there, right? Uh but then I saw a lot of people who were just like, bros, like we're coming on the back end of COVID, right? Like there is going to be real pieces of these sorts of announcements that are missing just because, of how I mean, you and I are living that in World
yeah.
of Warcraft, right? Like there hasn't been a patch for we don't have a
Hell,
release date on
you and I are living that
9/21.
in real life, right? Like both of our
Yeah,
both of
I
our
mean,
day jobs, right? Like
no, that is absolutely true, right? Like I definitely think that it is a bigger hit than people have necessarily seen. And so if you are a consumer hanging out at your house watching this show and kind of mentally comparing it to other shows, it might look that way. But I just feel like
yeah.
the ramifications of COVID are huge.
I wonder, like, so in the kind of the wider world, right? Like, there's big discussion about like what back to work looks like, right? Like,
Mm,
um, and, people who are potentially leaving their jobs with their companies because the companies are asking them to come back to work. They're like, I like working remote. I'll find a company that lets me do full remote. I think this has a potential to be like much more impactful on games because it's much harder to make someone crunch when they're not in the office, right?
yeah.
Like, and
Wow, that's a good point.
and so I wonder if either people are like, I'm not doing this anymore, or like people who are remote, it's like, well, you know we told them to crunch and they didn't, and we had to push the date a bit more, and that's probably better for like the industry on the whole, right? Like crunch isn't a great practice, um, at least in excess, right? I think you can make arguments for like short term goal pushing, but that's neither here nor there.
I also think that it's harder to do certain things the games studios rely on just administratively,
Yeah,
right? For instance, something that got like Jeff or Jason Schreier talked about the release of Shadowlands, and he talked about how one of the things that they did to get Shadowlands out the door was pull a bunch of devs from the Overwatch team, just to temporarily do polish, bug fixing, all that kind of stuff. Just and for a short amount of time, right? 2 months or whatever. That's a really easy thing to do if you're in the office. You just say, "Hey, listen, for the next couple of months, you're going to go here instead of here, right? Go to this office instead of that office, or pull from this depot instead of this, like, whatever." But doing that at home, switching gears entirely to go to a completely different game, a completely different project, get up to speed on that project, like, that's a really tough thing to do. And I think there are a million examples of these kinds of things that go on, in the product management of game companies that is absolutely going to get hit by
Yeah. Plus, like
remote.
I have to imagine for large games, right? Like doing things like working with the code base in a way, right? Like um, I don't know how any of these big companies do it, but if you have to like I imagine if you're like next to the build machine, right, you can pull the code directly and it's not a big deal. Whereas if you have to do that
Oh
over the
yeah.
internet, or like that's then you're beholden to Comcast or whatever, right? Like
No, this directly affected me. We like upgraded our internet a bunch because I was spending a bunch of time downloading and uploading shit all the time. And and we're just talking about indie games, right? These things are, even the biggest one of them is going to be less than 5 gigabytes, right? But imagine, having to be pushing and commits to the builds of a game like, WoW, Final Fantasy,
right.
Starfield, any of these huge titles, Call of Duty, right? Call of Duty's 150 gigabytes, right? Like, holy shit.
Yeah, and you're not building that on your. There's one of two things that's happening, right? Because you're almost certainly not building it on your local machine just for security reasons, right? Like in something that
Oh
big.
yeah, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
So like how like maybe I guess maybe they've got like a streaming setup so you can stream it remotely because like that's the only way that makes sense to me, right? Like unless you gotta send it, have it build remotely, and then they send you back the executable. That's gonna be like a multi-hour round trip, right? Like there's I'd actually be really curious as to how they do that. I don't know if that's public
I
information
am
or not.
also insanely curious now that you've mentioned it. I
Yeah,
I have no clue,
yeah,
but
because
that's awesome.
yeah, I mean, and one of the big casualties of COVID was, or part of it was Cyberpunk, right? Like they couldn't, that because of their concern over control of the game, they couldn't get third party testers in on machines, right, to test it, right? So like that's, and third party testing's got to be tough. Like companies don't want to do that remote because it's a security, like a real security, like a big security risk again. So, um, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But anyway,
they're
Microsoft. So what else got announced in here? The
Stalker
stupid
two.
Sea of Thieves thing. Oh, that was a good one. Yeah, it's Stalker 2 for sure.
Yeah, no. So I did you play Stalker one? I have not.
I did not play Stalker 1, but I really like this trailer. This
Yeah.
might honestly have been one of my favorite trailers. Maybe because I really enjoy Chernobyl, like that TV show. But I don't know. I thought Stalker 2 looked really great.
So this is one of the games to me that's like I don't know if I would have purchased this on my own, but it's on Game Pass. I'll play it, right? Like it is like a game passable game, right? Like
Yeah.
um Back for Blood got more play. But this Contraband game looks interesting. There's nothing there, right? Like it's like literally like a cinematic trailer, but it looked neat. And then like
Yeah, there was another game that was just a trailer that I thought looked neat.
well,
Redfall.
Redwall,
The
Redfall or Redwall. Yeah, Redfall. You're right. The vampire
Yeah. It
game.
is the next game from the Dishonored guys.
Yeah, Arcane.
Yeah, or the Arcane, which I thought was a little depressing. I really like the Dishonored series, but I guess maybe Dishonored 2 didn't sell or something like that because I haven't heard anything about a Dishonored 3. Um, and but I just this trailer just looked neat. It like really showed off a sweet kind of world and aesthetic that I was absolutely on board for. So that was cool.
Yeah. You uh like you said, there was the Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is getting a Pirates of the Caribbean update, which is
It's the stupidest thing. Which, to be honest with you, I am. It is. I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, it's like if there was a Lord of the Rings crossover in like World of Warcraft or like Total War Warhammer 2, right? It's like if I could get Gimli as a legendary lord for the dwarves in Warhammer. I was just like, because it's so clear to me that Sea of Thieves derives its lifeblood from the Pirates of the Caribbean
yeah, yeah.
series, right? Like Sea of Thieves is a game that's like, do you think the Pirates of the Caribbean series is a cool set of movies and a fun world that's really interesting? Then then like this is the game for you. Play this video game, right? But it's just so weird and dissonant to me to put the thing that inspired the derivative of in the derivation, right? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's weird. It's all right. So what else? What else happened in here that's super notable?
I don't know. There
Oh,
was a
did you want
Fallout
to talk about?
76 thing that I did not look at
Yeah,
because
the
I'm never playing that game.
so
I've
12
actually
minutes.
heard that that game got good. Somebody told me. I had a conversation with somebody the other day where they were like, "No, Fallout 76 is legitimately really good and really fun, and you should play it." And I was like,
So
"Okay, but no."
I if it's on Game Pass, I might, right? Like,
You know what? That's true. That's fair.
um, so like some of these indie hits, like 12 minutes, which is by Annapurna, or is published by Annapurna, which is
Mhm.
not Aquapara. How often do you guys get that confusion?
Very commonly. It was a big deal at PAX East because we would tell people, "Oh, hey, go to the Akupara booth," and they would go to the Annapurna booth. Be like, "Where are you?"
And yeah, unfortunately for you guys, they're a bit bigger deal right now. Like 12
Mhm.
minutes is getting a lot of play. It's got what Willem Dafoe as one of the voice actors, I think. It looks really cool. It's it looks very indie. It looks very indie in like the indie movie sense, not necessarily in the indie game sense. Although it's kind of got those vibes too.
Yep.
Um, uh, like you said, Fallout 76, Hades, which Game Pass, if that gets to more people. You want to talk about Halo a little bit, right?
Yeah, so people are really mad about the t-shirt or whatever thing that like Cortana is wearing in the new Halo Infinite. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Uh,
Do you care about like virtual boobies?
Eric Kain had an article about it earlier today. He's like,
Oh, what did he say?
he was like, it's not Cortana, right? It's like a different thing, and like he had a deeper take about how like Cortana's over sexualized nature in Halo 4 was an intentional thing because that he views Halo 4 story as essentially a romantic story between the Master Chief and Cortana. Blah blah blah. Um, but I don't know. I just kept I just kept trying to figure out if she was the girl from or the secondary woman from Thor, like the sidekick, Natalie Portman's sidekick. That's what that's what I thought she was. The
Let me
character that
let me see the new Cortana. I
it's a character that you like in
Kat
Thor.
Dennings, you mean?
I think the one that's like the coffee girl in Thor.
Yeah, yeah. So that's Kat Dennings. I don't think so, but maybe.
Okay, I don't know.
I don't know.
I just kept staring at me like, is that who do I recognize? Is that that girl? And then I didn't bother to look it up, which I could have, but I didn't. Because I didn't care that much. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
Halo.
I think the take I agree with most is I do think that she's probably like too hard sexualized in some of the old ones. Like I would if I was if I was a character designer, I would probably change like Cortana's character design. But I definitely think that the new one is like kind of bad. I just think it's ugly to be honest. Like I don't really care about like it just
Yeah,
doesn't look good. I feel like the thing I like about kind of Cortana or like there's a version of this in Mass Effect called Avena um that I like is this sort of idea of like the Vitruvian man or like a Greek statue, right? Like it's not sexual, but it is nude because it's like a kind of I I don't know, like a fundament it's like the fundamental human form, right? And and so I feel like that's the kind of balance that I would want to strike compared to I don't know
yeah,
whatever this thing is. She has a weird uniform is the thing. It's that it looks like she's wearing a uniform, which
yeah.
is like why the fuck would an AI use a uniform?
I would recommend looking up the Arcane article. It's on his Diabolical newsletter. Just because
Okay.
he agrees with you. He thinks that she looks too blocky. He's got a nice image that's like the first four Cortanas, which are get increasingly sexy. Um, and then makes comparison to Tomb Raider, where she got less sexy, but she still looked fine, right? Like his
Yeah,
criticism.
that is a great point. I think that that is very correct.
Yeah,
It's like the Tomb Raider thing where it's like, you know, you can I don't know. I just feel like that there are way more dimensions to what to what a character design can look like that aren't just like how much booby is there,
yeah,
which is sort of what the conversation was focused on.
yeah. I mean, there's also like we don't know anything about the character yet, right? Like, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with sexy, but like,
Yeah.
it's also like a weird hit, especially because it's not the same character, right? Like, it's not Cortana, right? Like I could maybe understand the point a little bit more if this was supposed to be Cortana and it's not, but it's not.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm actually looking at a Halo 5 version of Cortana. I wonder why they moved off of this. Uh, the Halo 5 version of Cortana. Oh, wait, is she a real person? Oh, wait, never mind. Maybe she's a
Is
real
it
person.
Dr.
I never played
Halsey?
Halo 5, so I
Neither
don't
did
even
I.
know. I'm just looking at this stuff on Google, and the Halo 5 version of Cortana also is sort of wearing a, like wearing a a suit or whatever. But hold on, I can link you the literal image that I'm looking at. Oh wait, what the fuck? This isn't the link. Show me the. I just want to see this image.
But she,
Here we go.
where did you link it to me?
I just put it in the Discord.
Okay. Dude.
That is apparently from Halo 5, which again I never played, but like that's a very reasonable version of
Yeah.
Cortana as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't play Halo 5 either,
I
so
have heard that the Halos that I liked Halo 4. Did you ever play Halo 4?
no, I did not. I think I played
Halo
some
4 was
multiplayer.
the first one with the new studio, 343 instead of
Okay.
Bungie.
Bungie, yeah.
But I actually liked that story quite a bit. It really took the franchise in a new direction, which I liked and I thought was cool. And it introduced a bunch of like new sweet lore. It wasn't anything crazy, but I remember like playing it, having a good time. It was maybe like a year or two after release, that kind of thing. But then Halo 5 came out, and my understanding is everybody hates Halo 5 from a lore perspective. Like it was a bad game, and it was not good, and they're mad about it. And so Halo Infinite has a lot of scrutiny because people aren't necessarily trusting of uh 343 to handle
Yeah.
the series.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. The game looks neat. I don't know how Halo it will be. I'm not enough of a Halo fanatic to care so much, but it looks fun. Um,
Sure.
the
Yeah.
one thing that I realized watching the trailer is, Halo doesn't have that kind of like ADS thing that COD kind of like baked into me for a long time, right? Like that you kind of have to ADS except in certain specific situations. Um, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out. But before we spend too much more time, since we're 15 minutes in, was there anything else you want to talk about in the Xbox show? Replace looks really cool. The Outer Worlds 2 trailer
Oh, I
was
love that. That okay, I'm sorry. I said before that something was my favorite. That was my favorite thing in all of this. It's the Outer Worlds 2 trailer, which was, oh my god, I have been in a million meetings that have been exactly like that. It was so funny.
for the folks at home that may not have seen it. It's very sarcastic, right? It's like, it's a trailer, and there's nothing like very openly. Here's it. Like, it's basically describing what a video game trailer looks like.
Yeah,
Um,
it like describes the process of someone who has made a trailer explaining the trailer to you in a marketing meeting. It was like uncanny.
uh, I have heard
But yes,
I've heard through the grapevine that and by the grapevine I mean through somebody on Twitter or something, that the guy who made it was like, I can't believe they let me make this.
yeah, I mean, one of the funny things about the Outer Worlds 2 trailer, I've seen a lot of good trailers and bad trailers be made for a lot of different sorts of reasons. But one of the things I actually did find pretty funny about the Outer Worlds 2 trailer is sort of how hollow this style of trailer really is, which is what makes it transcendent. It is both a piece of marketing material and truly magnificent satire. Because I agree with you, like you said, it actually doesn't show anything about the game. And one of the things that we have learned, that I have learned, the more I'm doing marketing stuff, right, with Occupier and everything, is that people don't really like trailers like this. These are the trailers that we want, and they're also the trailers that kind of get shared sometimes, right? But the real trailers that people respond to are mostly like, you know, um, there's a friend of mine who does a series about like what makes like good indie game Steam pages, and one of the things he talks about is on an indie game Steam page, people don't want to see cinematic bullshit on a trailer. They want you to basically put together a 30-second GIF of your gameplay and have that be the first thing that shows. Because if you start with from the whatevers of what, they're literally just going to scroll down. Nobody's going to watch the trailer. Which I think is just true, and it's so funny that like the Outer Worlds 2 trailer kind of highlights that, right? Like this looks like every fucking trailer I have ever seen. Honestly, the Battlefield trailer, which also came around this time, but I
In
think
this
it was
presentation.
earlier last week.
Okay, yeah. The first announcement was earlier last week, but they had gameplay during the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw the first trailer, which was early last week. That trailer looks a lot like the Outer Worlds trailer with like the blobs and shit like that. I just thought, oh god, it's so good. Yeah, I mean, I barely played the Outer Worlds one, right? We talked about this where I got to that hub world and it was a good game that I was having a lot of fun with, but I got to the hub world and I just like
Eh,
put it down and
yeah,
never
same.
picked it back up, and I can't explain it to myself, and it makes me want to go back and play the first one because uh
That is my understanding of like the kind of popular opinion of that game is that it was good, but like not spectacular. And two will probably be good, like very good then. But who knows?
in a way I sort of like I spent $60 on that game, right? Like I didn't it was on Game Pass, but I didn't get it through Game Pass. I straight up bought it, and I don't even really regret that purchase in a sense, even though I didn't actually play the game, because I do think I like games like this and I want them to continue to be made in a way, right? Like I like the idea that I am signaling in a dumb way that yes, I would like to see more games like this, please.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. The last two things that were shown off at the Microsoft show, I'm only mentioning these because they always get me. Were Microsoft Flight Simulator and Forza, and these games always they're the best looking games that I give zero shits about.
I know.
Like
It also feels like other people really care about it, and I
yeah,
can't understand. People really care about Forza specifically. I've never seen anyone in the whole world give a shit about Forza except for Forza people, and you know what? Fair enough. More power to you,
yeah.
right? Like
And Forza is at least like a game, right? Like Flight Simulator. I feel like belongs at like an aviation conference, not at a video game conference, right? Like because it's not even like it's not even like there's like not like a competitive aspect to it, right? It's just like the joy of flying for people who don't actually fly planes, which fair enough, but like that also has a movie tie-in apparently. Um, Top Gun is getting a tie-in in Microsoft Flight Simulator. You can play as Maverick. Um,
you know, that's fun, I
yeah,
guess. That more power to you,
yeah.
people who want to play as a movie character from 30 years ago.
You know,
Have you seen Top Gun? There's a new
no,
Top Gun movie coming out. Are you like interested in that at all?
yeah. I guess. There's some rumblings about how like unlike the first good American one, the second one's like funded by the Red Chinese. And so we'll. So
I mean, I don't know. I watched the first Top Gun for the first time
I think you talked
last
about
year, I
this.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It like washed over me. I honestly do not remember any of the plot points at all.
I
I remember Danger Zone.
yeah. I need to go watch it just because like it's like I watched what's the other Tom Cruise movie, the You Can't Handle the Truth.
Jerry
Um,
Maguire. Oh no, A Few Good Men.
yeah. He's not.
To be honest, I actually really liked A Few Good Men, even though I think it's kind of
Well,
bad.
it's a bad
It's like
law
bad in a
movie.
realism
Yeah,
sense, but
yeah,
like a good in a narrative sense. That's kind of it.
yeah. No, but like I feel like Jerry Maguire, A Few Good Men, and Top Gun are all like this. Like you confuse one for the other. That maybe Gattaca too, right? Like you're all just kind of like this.
That wasn't even Tom Cruise. Gattaca was Ethan Hawke.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, it
I
shows you
think
how
the
much.
other one I think of for Tom Cruise is Rain Man. In that
Oh yeah. Right, man.
Rain Man was him and Dustin Hoffman, and that
Yeah.
was also right in that time period.
Man, I wonder if you could make Rain Man today, right? Like have Dustin Hoffman play like a severely autistic person. Uh,
I do
that
not know.
that
Yeah.
is there was one where I think it was another famous actor plays like a mentally disabled guy with a kid.
Trump 10. I remember this. I am Sam.
Yeah, I am Sam. Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the only other thing to mention, I think, about Forza is they wanted to make very sure that we knew that it was an authentic depiction of Mexico in Forza 5 Horizons. So the part of this that was really funny to me is they said this is an authentic and and like painstakingly recreated version, and then it's like, one of the events is we drop pinatas on the ground and you run into them to collect them. It's like very authentic Microsoft.
Wait, so what are the last things?
Yeah.
So Square Enix, I felt like did not have anything interesting except for Guardians of the Galaxy. That was my takeaway.
Real quick, before we go away from
Okay.
Xbox, the very last thing they did as a teaser is they're releasing a mini fridge shaped like an Xbox Series X, which is the biggest fucking shit post. Yeah,
that is also a pretty big shit post. And then the other thing, we talked about this before, is they're adding 1 million games to Game Pass.
Yes.
Doom Eternal is coming to Game Pass. I remember because I was like, I have never played either Doom or Doom Eternal, and I should do that on Game Pass because I obviously like those games are good games.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other games are going to Game Pass. So
Square
Enix, yeah. So Square Enix did a bunch of stuff. A lot of it I did not care about, except for Guardians of the Galaxy, which everyone was yelling about because you in the Guardians of the Galaxy game, you can only play as Star-Lord.
Yeah.
And also they don't have the likenesses of the actual actors, which I think is good, but people on Twitter were very mad about. Do you have any thoughts about that?
So I think it would be fine if they got like. So I've talked about this before when we talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't like movie Drax because comic book Drax is a lot smarter. And something I liked about the trailer is it looked like they made what's the female assassin's character name? Gamora. Like Gamora seems more like comic book Gamora, which thumbs up for me. But it seems like everybody else is trying to be their movie character personality. And at that point, I think it's a problem that they don't have the likenesses, right? Like,
I agree with you for sure.
Like,
I do think that I mean, the reason they don't do this likeness stuff is just like contract bullshit, right? Like Chris Pratt owns his own likeness, and you have to pay a gigantic licensing fee in order to get his likeness in the game. But I think I was not interested in the gameplay footage that I saw. I just thought this was, I don't know, rote and boring and uninteresting, which is maybe because like in a certain sense, I'm a little over the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Also, like we talked about Black Widow is coming out or whatever, and I guess the Eternals trailer dropped, and I just like could not muster anything to care about it. But you know,
the other big game from the Square was Final Fantasy Origins: Strangers of Paradise, which is just being memed to hell because like it's chaos. I hate chaos. I'm here to destroy chaos. Right? Like that was the big memes. It's by Team Ninja, with the people that did Neo. We'll see, I guess.
Like this is another Forza for me. Like this game's not made for me, so I feel like I don't have an opinion.
the other big meme to come out of this is they dropped a demo at the same time, and the demo didn't work. You downloaded it, and it was instantly corrupted, and everyone was like, chaos!
That's funny. Yeah. That's good shit. Okay, what else got? What else got?
So the other shows where there was the.
Oh my god, we haven't talked about Nintendo at all. Fuck.
Yeah. So real quick, there was a PC Game Show and the Games Radar Show. As shows, they were silly, right? Like the PC Game Show is always like some like weirdly sponsored. Like the best / worst one was when they were sponsored by Drake's Cakes, and the fucking Drake's Cake duck was like out on stage with like one of the hosts one year. But this year it was MechWarrior 5, so at least it's in universe. It was still a dumb storyline, but like it's what you expect from the show. The Games Radar Show, which is like the secondary show, was like so frenetic. It was like announcement. And like, just like little game clips, but like, like 10 seconds for each game. A PC gaming show, the only big things were like Gabe Newell showed up on screen for like 5 seconds.
Because he announced Steam Next Fest, right?
Yeah. And so
I think did he mention Grime in that? I remember we were talking about that, but I didn't actually see that part.
He didn't mention any game specifically when he talked, I don't think. just that a bunch of games would be available to demo. The other big funny part of that is the New Blood guys, who are like kind of like the big retro dev studio right now. They last year there was an issue with their trailer that didn't play right, and so this year the joke was is that he was talking, and then Day 9 is like, all right, wait, we're gonna bump you because Gabe Newell wants to talk. Um, and that was
I love Day 9.
and it was a big joke. And so the I think it's like either the lead dev or the head of the studio is like, fuck you, like it was very funny. But in terms of announcements, there was some cool stuff there. But like I like the PC gaming show because it's like always a ton of smaller titles, right? Like there was a couple of turn-based strategy games, just like a warband game of some sort that I can't remember the full name of, but there's a lot there, right? But then, sorry, since we're running out of time, I guess we should go on to Nintendo, right? Which is the last big show. What happened today? And the big announcements were one, Tekken guy in Smash, which is no one really predicted, but like it makes sense, right? It's like the big fighting. It's like another big fighting game character, and I think the guys who actually like Smash is I think half published by Bandai Namco, and then Tekken I think is as well, so makes sense. The real big I think the really big announcement was the announcement of a new Metroid game coming out in the fall. And not Metroid.
Yeah, that was the one that
yeah.
I saw everyone posting about. It's called Metroid Dread,
yeah.
and is the 5th in like the series of true sort of 2D Metroid games, right? Like not a Metroid. Yeah, right. Like a Metroidvania. Which I mean, part of it is that like a lot. I feel like this is a genre that got kind of owned by indie games for the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is a there's the big one that got kickstarted by the Castlevania guy.
Symphony of what is
Yeah,
Bloodstained.
Bloodstained. Yeah. But like no big publishers have been doing anything with Metroidvanias for the last however many years. So I think that was really interesting. I think that was really cool to see the it's kind of like return to form. Even though I would love to go back to Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime 2, it was like that was a huge game for me. I was like destroyed by that game.
Yeah.
When in 2004.
I mean, and they had to precede the announcement of Dread with we're still working on Metroid Prime 4. Don't worry, but we're gonna show you this now.
Yeah.
Which is so Dread is interesting because it's like obviously got that horror tinge, which the other Metroid games had, but not as much. But like that's definitely a theme in kind of like the more modern, like Axiom Verge is very much kind of like the horror element taken out pretty far. And I don't think this is as far as Axiom Verge, but I'm excited for this game. It looks neat.
Yeah, me too. I am absolutely definitely on board for Metroid Dread. The other big one for me was Breath of the Wild 2, which I've still never played Breath of the Wild 1, but that was a pretty monumental announcement. It felt like just because like I feel like Breath of the Wild 1 was a really big touchstone game. Like if we were to chart like gaming milestones, Breath of the Wild coming out made a pretty big impact. And so seeing a second one was I guess maybe predictable in a certain sense, but I don't know, neat.
I mean, it was to be fair, they announced it last year, but this is the first time we've seen any sort of. I think it was last year, or the year before, but this is the first time we've seen any gameplay at all. So that's super neat. What else? We also got like an Advance Wars remaster, which is neat. Like
I've never seen any of those games before in my life, but
really,
I watched the trailer and I was like, this looks fine.
It's neat because it was pixel art on the DS in its original incarnation, so like having it be like 3D-ish models. Or no, it wasn't on the DS; it was on the Advance, right? Because that's why it's called Advance Wars.
Yeah. And then another one that was sweet was the new WarioWare. Did you ever play the WarioWare games?
Not that I played the WarioWare games a lot in the Kmart in my childhood, right? Like in the video game section, they had like the the playable consoles and like WarioWare was
Yeah,
one of
we
those
played a
games.
lot of WarioWare on the Wii because like when that came out, just because it was like a very fun party game.
Yeah.
As like it's just all mini games basically, like back to back. You just play a bunch of mini games and sort of like waste time with your friends, which hey man, like that's a good time. Sign me the fuck up.
Speaking of which, they announced like a Mario Party collection, like which has like a bunch of mini games and like a best of hits, which
I
is
mean, I would love to play a Mario Party 2. Uh, what was it called? Mario Party Superstar is a collection of past maps and minigames. I would love to play like a remaster of Mario Party 2 because I played so much of that when I was a kid.
also I think this is gonna be a sleeper hit. Is Mario Golf comes out in like 2 weeks, and I know that you're like a real golf player and you can play real golf mode, but they've also got like battle golf and like this one mode that looks insane to me. It's golf racing. You basically hit the ball like it's like plays like regular golf, but you sprint to your ball, and the idea is to sink your ball as fast as possible. Um, just like you're like literally, it's like if it's like how like little kids play golf. Like if you don't tell them how it works, but they're just like, I gotta get the ball in first, right? So
I am actually legitimately pumped for golf, but I also think I want to not play it because I'd be mad about it. Like like if I think I don't know. A part of me thinks that these games are very cool and very fun, and like Mario Tennis, for instance, is a great game, and I love that game. But I feel like if I was like a tennis player, it would really bother me. By the way, Nick in the chat says best of all mini games. Yeah, it's a bunch of stuff from the N64 versions of the game. So I'm like looking at these details now. So it's like maps from the original Mario parties that were on the N64 and a bunch of like the mini games that were on those titles. So that's what the Mario Party Superstars collection is.
by the way, chat, if you had a game that you thought was particularly exceptional, feel free to post it in the chat and maybe we'll talk about it while we go through our weeks because that's pretty much everything. Um, I mean, that's all the big shows. I heard the Capcom show was bad, and I heard the Wholesome show was fine, but nothing
Oh
super
yeah, the
notable.
Capcom show is also bad. All they did was announce the new uh DLC because everybody likes everyone simps for that vampire lady
Oh,
for
Lady
Resident
Demetrius,
Evil 8.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was the other big thing. At the Square conference, I think the Platinum game Babylon's Fall was announced. Like it was announced that it's a live service game, and I saw everybody on Twitter being like, "Ugh, fuck."
Oh
Um,
yeah, I also saw that as well.
um, I don't know if it's good. I won't care, but I also probably won't play it unless it reviews well. So that's not going to be in Game Pass. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, so what was your week like? I mean, it's been 2 weeks since we've recorded, right? Because
yeah.
you went on vacation last week, so.
Yep. So my week, not have a lot of like traditional media stuff. I went down to Florida to enjoy the sun. I think there's some interesting stuff there because like the first thing I did was I went to a podcast meetup, and like I had very much had kind of like a very parasocial moment, right? Like one of the guys there was like, one of the like they had like a surprise guest that was like a person that I had been reading and following for a very long time, and I was like, oh, it's this guy. And I'm just like, and like I got to talk to him afterwards. Like, you have no idea who I am, and I've been listening to you for years. It's like that the very kind of biting, like, oh, moment. Um, but I went to like what else did I do? I ended up playing a lot of there's let me tell you the name of this game because this mobile game takes up a ton of my time. It's called Star Battle,
Hearthstone.
and it's basically like Star Battle. It's like it's a puzzle game. I play a lot of puzzle games on my
Okay.
phone. And you basically like you have to like fill in a grid like like you have to put 2 stars in each row, 2 stars in each column, and 2 stars within each shape that's drawn within it, and you have to figure out how they go together. And these things are like these types of games like crack to me. They're like things I do while I listen to podcasts. Is all like this like and I like it's fun for me to like figure out like the generalized rules, right? Like for this game, there's like some repeating shapes, and I can tell like I can look at it and be like, oh, that shape means that these stars go in this formation, right? So like I can like buzz through the really easy puzzles. Um, what else? I went to I went from Miami to Orlando, and Orlando I went to an EDM concert, and I feel old because I was like, "What is this music? This is not the EDM I remember from my youth." Um, Basically, part of this is that like trap's been popular for a while, and this festival is very trap heavy, and this is the part where I really did feel like an old man. It's like this all sounds the same to me. I don't understand. um,
They just don't do it like when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just that like smaller artists by their like just kind of the reason they're smaller is because they're less distinct and less impactful. Like towards the end of the night, I definitely heard some sets. Like part of the reason I went is I recognized some of the names, and they were definitely playing their newer stuff that's more trap inspired than I'm personally. For the EDM fans out there, I'm more into hardstyle and drum and bass. And like so this is fun. There's a band called Nero, who has been they're a trio, but it's been one guy doing DJ sets for like the past 3 or 4 years because the other two went and had a kid together, and so they stopped touring. But the rumor is they're going to come back at some point soon, maybe. But they played a DJ set which was nice. And there were, like I said, there were a couple of things that were nice, but
When they play DJ sets, what does that mean? Do they do actual like turntabling, right? Like
yeah.
putting.
Well, so that is the like most people are doing DJ sets as it were because like that's like what most of EDM is. But specifically it's with in this context it's without the other members and which are typically the vocalists, right? It's just like the guy who is like the producer who is always the producer, but he's just doing that and like there's no live performance component. Um,
Okay, very cool.
the name of the festival is Forbidden Kingdom, and they had dragons at like the like it was like fantasy themed. The show had lore, which I thought was neat. They had like dragon eggs that like slowly hatched over the course of the weekend. So it was very neat aesthetically, but musically it wasn't my favorite. Um, and I ended up watching a lot of E3 shows in my hotel room, so that was a lot of my week. I don't know. I also ate
Well,
nice
fair enough.
food.
I've been
Yeah,
doing a bunch of shit. Um, you know, obviously there's always like the undercurrent of like playing WoW, right? Like, but the big things that I did this week, I have been trying so hard to play Total War Warhammer 2 again, but I may have just like maxed myself out on that game. Because over the past like 2 weeks, I have been playing like 3 or 4 turns at a time in a Wood Elf campaign just because I wanted to definitively beat the new Wood Elf experience, right? Which honestly turned out to be insanely fun, but it was just like, man, playing those end turns was just like mind numbing. It's kind of at that point where like nobody can really threaten you and you're just sort of like counting down the turns to do the thing. Um which like there's just so much maintenance and upkeep and things that are demanding your attention that it just like becomes very boring very quickly. But the final battle was really insane. It's the same final battle that I used to have, but if you do it right, you can just one of the things is that the wood elves get is a bunch of bonuses to doing forest battles, and obviously the final battle is in a forest. So like there's an improvement that says you get 100% extra ammunition for all of your troops if they're in a forest battle. And the whole point of that final forest battle is you fight against waves of beastmen coming in, right? And in the original version of that forest battle, it's actually very difficult because you run out of ammo on your archers insanely quickly, right? So you have to be like very judicious with where are you using your archers to put out your damage. But with the extra ammo, my archers could just kind of like fire for the entire time. Which made it easier, but also more fun. Just because like I was microing my archers to fire instead of to tell them to stop firing, which is less fun than telling them to just blow certain things up over the course of the whole thing, which was honestly pretty great and pretty fun. But the other big thing that I started playing was No Man's Sky, of which I've only put in a couple of hours at this point, right? Like maybe 5 or so hours. And it is simultaneously like a lot of games that I've played. It's very like Valheim, right? Very like Minecraft, any of these kinds of like builder games, right? Obviously, I never really played like Ark or whatever, but I'm sure it's similar. But the scale, I had no conception for the size and scale of No Man's Sky, where like even the planets are insanely huge. I expected these planets to kind of be like game planets, where it's like, you know, it suggests the idea, but it's like, no, a No Man's Sky planet is legitimately thousands and thousands of miles long. And there it is just filled with shit. It's just like filled with stuff. And it boggles my mind how they made this game. I have no idea, it it is crazy that I guess it's living up to that sort of promise. Though the game has a lot more direction now than I understand it had on launch, which is good.
I
You know, like
I I refunded it on launch because it wasn't good on launch.
what was it like on launch? What could you even do?
Not much. Like you could kind of like mine resources and like put them in your ship and like fly to new planets. There. So Internet Historian has a video. The title card says, "Yes, Woman's Land," and it's called "The Engoodening of No Man's Sky." And
Yeah.
it basically tells a story about how like, they should have released this game in early access. It like got overhyped, and what's his name, Sean, whatever his name is, basically like overpromised, and like the way Internet Historian tells is very kind of like sympathetic. It's like he's like a game developer, and like Sony put him on like news shows, and like he's just like, yeah, I guess we're gonna have the greatest game of all time. and uh and then when they launched a failure, they didn't speak to anyone for like 6 months, and then dropped an update that made it significantly better, and that's what they've been doing ever since. So
Yeah, I mean, I had, there's like base building and stuff like that. So that's really what it comes down to. And it really feels like, I go to a place, I build a base, I collect a couple of resources, I do a little thing. There's like a little like quest marker thing in the corner that just kind of like tells you like kind of what you should do next. Um, but that core loop was just very satisfying, right? Like, oh, go to a place, build a base. Oh, here's a new starship. I'm gonna put my I'm gonna try and fix this starship and add it to my starship collection. I have to do it now. I have to go find a bunch of resources to do the starships to put it in my collection. Like one of the crazy things, and I think maybe the most innovative mechanic in this game at all, is a language mechanic of I can't talk to any of the fucking aliens. I don't speak their language, but I can learn their language by walking up to these like writings that they have, and like you inspect the writing and it teaches you a single word of the language, right? But as you start to get words, you get weapon, you get interloper, you get, you know, um you get gun, you get like a bunch of different, and now I'm starting to understand a little bit more. Oh, this guy is a traitor, this guy is a, whatever else, just because I can see some of these words or whatever. And I was like, this is legitimately crazy and sweet, like this idea that I'm like really exploring a galaxy kind of like from absolutely nothing or whatever. My one problem with the game is that it has save points. When you enter, exit a starship, or you use a save beacon, you create a save point, and it fucking crashes all the time. So I've lost a ton of saves, which was really frustrating. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's my experience with No Man's Sky so far. Fuck.
all right. So I got a couple more things to talk about. One of which is
Sure.
directly relevant. So the other big thing that happened is Guilty Gear Strive launched this week, and I didn't get to play it while I was on vacation. So I came home and I was like so ready to play it,
Hmm.
and I downloaded it and I pulled out my fight stick, and it launches. It's like, oh, we still need to install like the story or whatever. You want to play a CPU match? I'm like, okay, sure. And so I pulled out my fight stick and I started playing, and it's like, oh, one of my buttons is sticking. Um, I haven't cleaned it in a long time, so I'll take it apart and clean it. And I went to pull out the button, and it fucking cracked. So I can't play. I'm waiting for. I ordered more new buttons, and they're coming in tomorrow. So I haven't gotten to play this game I've been so hyped for a long
I
time.
actually watched a Guilty Gear stream for a while, because I just like I saw on my like following list, that somebody was playing Guilty Gear and he was playing Potemkin. and he was just wrecking people on his stream, like people who were maybe like 50 people, right, that were watching his stream. And then he was just like queuing into matches with them, and he was fucking demolishing all of them basically, because I guess they're just not as good as he is. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think Potemkin's also got a lot of potential for like noob stomping, because like I feel like that's just kind of like the ambit of grapplers, right? Because they don't work a lot like other characters, right? Like you
yeah.
basically bypass grabs, or not grabs. You basically bypass blocks by grabbing, which you can do with any character, but is particular like that's what you're supposed to do with grapplers. Um,
Yeah, he had some. His thing was aerial. He was like constantly knocking people into the air and doing these aerials with them, which I guess I have no idea if that's a thing for Potemkin, but that was just based on the 30 minutes of stream I was watching.
oh, you mean like would he like knock him into the air and then like he'd play a cinematic and he'd jump up after them?
No, 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 no. Like he would knock him into the air and then do some kind of, I don't know, jump
Did,
punch thing.
the fist, the mega fist. The mega fist is like a very spell. That's another noob crushing level. Like there were games during I almost feel bad about it. There were games during the beta where I would just like mega fist over and over again, and like people would be like, "Oh, I don't know how to deal with it." It's like then you're gonna fucking
Yeah, his strategy also included this thing where you just fall on the ground and you do a shockwave along the ground.
Yeah,
So it's like either meet me in the air where I punch you in the face really hard, or you stay on the ground and I
yeah. Oh yeah,
flop over.
yeah. The flop doesn't do a lot of damage, but like it get you know he can't dash, but then he can't dash. He can dash backwards, but he can't dash forward. Um, and so a big part of any grappler's game is closing the distance and like getting the grabs off. So um, there's also like there's apparently a lot of tech that I need to learn that you can like called card canceling, but he's got like a shoulder charge, but you can cancel the actual hit part that you slide forward while you're doing like your grab, so you get like extra range on the grab. It's a little bit it's super intricate. If anybody cares and wants to know about it, Rooflemonger is a streamer. He just put up a video about how to do it. I guess I'll link it in the description. But yeah, I'm super excited to get my buttons so I can fucking play the game. What else is there to talk about? Another big announcement that wasn't tied to E3, but Crowfall, one of the Kickstarter MMOs, is coming out in July. Which is like it's the first one, like of all the big Kickstarter MMOs, I think it's the first one that actually hit release. It's later than they wanted it to, but it's coming. I will say I didn't back into Kickstarter, but I did buy it at some point along the line. I haven't really played any of the beta stuff, but I'm gonna check it out in July, I guess.
Yeah, Crowfall and New World are also coming, because New World is
New Worlds is the
September.
Amazon game, but that's not a Kickstarter game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are, I just think of those as the two big uh Amazon, or the two big MMOs coming out soon.
The other one, I don't know if it's coming out soon, but the other big Kickstarter MMO is From the Ashes, I think. Creation from the Ashes, I think that's the name of it.
Let's give me a book.
What am I? Ashes of Creation.
Oh, Ashes of Creation. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They got in a little bit of trouble, or they got into trouble in that people were mad at PAX West a few years ago, because they were giving out hats that said "Make MMOs Great Again." um,
Wow.
yeah, and it was like whatever, but then like there were a bunch of people that were like just like screeching about it. It's like, guys, it's a hat. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm always interested by these games because the promise of them is always this. With Crowfall, it was like, you'll change the face of the world forever. With Ashes of Creations, it's your journey will shape the face of Vera. So I think there's this like promise of like, here's an MMO where you get to, you are fundamentally changing the game world with your actions. Um,
so
so
the I think the way they're doing it with Crowfall is pretty clever. The way it works is that the like game worlds spin up like at regular intervals, and they last like for like 3 months to like 2 years, I think. And like but then like it's over, right? And there's different phases for the campaigns, and then you can take stuff out of them. And then there are different rule sets for how you can go into other worlds, right? Like what you can take with you, what you can't. And so I think that's a neat way to kind of like let you have some of those bigger lasting impacts, especially like, and you have your own player housing essentially, which is called your Eternal Kingdom, which is totally persistent. But it's a good way to kind of like I think it's a neat way to have that kind of like long lasting impact without making it so that like new players are totally fucked, right? Like so I definitely
Yeah,
think
I
it's
get that. Like
interesting ideas.
looking at Ashes of Creation, it seems to entirely be about this, which I think is really interesting. And if I were to make an MMO, this would be the direction I would go, right? Like like Riot, for instance, announced they're making an MMO. Like I don't think I would want to compete with like WoW or whatever on in terms of creating like that hardcore raiding experience, right? Like that's sort of their thing. Like Final Fantasy sort of does this, right? Like there is just no one else on the planet is gonna do mythic rating like WoW does mythic rating. So you find like other avenues to sort of take advantage of. So I feel like this is actually pretty like smart and interesting. But man, I do not know how these guys how do you put it together, right? Like one of the things is that like they say that cities will rise and fall as you shape the world of Vera, and like quests and secrets will unlock as as you change like the population. And I do actually remember reading this a while ago where like they talk about like the when you do the quest that says bring the builder guy 15 piles of wood, right? He takes that wood and he builds a house, right? And the place becomes more populous or whatever. But it's like I just really wonder how the underlying structure of that goes because it's kind of like phasing content in and out constantly, which seems nuts to me.
Yeah, but like that, or like you have to have a way to like destroy the houses, right? Like you either have to
Yeah.
phase it so it's unique. So I think this comes down to like, but I think like the problem with MMOs is like I think the idea is they want you to be part of like a like I think the fantasy is actually akin more to like a D&D game, but it doesn't work like that because everybody's a hero, right? Like I think the kind of the platonic ideal of an MMO would be a game that's populated by a bunch of like normal people and like some of you are heroes, but your actual interaction with other players is relatively limited, right?
Hmm.
Like I think Destiny's patrols kind of work this way. I don't think it works perfectly because I don't think it's got like enough of the normalization stuff. But like if you wanted to feel like a hero in a living, breathing world, you need a lot of not heroes. And MMOs are not that.
Yep.
MMOs are like, a full population of heroes. Everybody's a hero. Which I don't know. It's I think every once in a while people try and like capture that kind of like base fantasy or like everything's within the player's hands, but then like you get into weird persistent problems, which is why I think you need to do clever things to kind of mitigate that. Which I think the like they said the Crowfall limited campaigns is I think an interesting version of that.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but obviously it's not super ideal, right? Because like you ideally you'd want to be able to do a fully continuous thing, but then you can't. You're going to drive off new players. So yeah,
Yeah, it's tough.
yeah,
That's a crazy market to be in. Well, like I had an argument with somebody the other day where we were talking about, he was talking about the problem with WoW PvP, and he was like, gear shouldn't matter in PvP, right? Like it should only be skill. And I just think like, and my argument is that's just anathema to an MMO, right?
yeah,
Like the promise of playing an MMO is that your gear matters, and it matters for a long time, right? When I play a game of League of Legends and I walk out of that game, I lose everything. I don't have my Infinity Edge, I don't have my gold, right? I start at ground zero from the next game, right? Like the duration of that game is 45 minutes. The duration of a WoW patch is months. And every piece of gear I get, I know that this piece of gear is going to be, like useful like later on. So I just like I just don't see a way that you can get around that. But it is a really interesting question because like especially now we're at a point in the season where like if you want to get started in PvP, you just have to get pub stomped for the next 80 years until you grind enough whatever to get, a baseline set of gear until you can really like start competing. Which, man, that's tough. Like I don't really
yeah.
know how you get around
No,
that.
no, because I think you're like I think there's like a version of WoW, like a version of WoW PvP without gear, but like it also seems like the game's not like. Frankly, I don't think it's good enough to justify that, right? Like I think you're absolutely right. I think it absolutely has to matter. I think the ideal version of this is that there's always enough people playing that like if you're new, you're just fighting against other new players in the
Yeah.
PvP mode, but I also don't think that happens, right? Like there's not enough people playing for that to be true.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, that is like something that we've been doing as we like wait for people to get on to do mythics or whatever. Is we'll just like queue for rated arenas, which has honestly been very fun because we're obviously incredibly geared PvE players, but the way WoW PvE is designed or PvP is designed is it specifically cares about versatility. You want a lot of versatility, and I don't want any versatility in my PvE armor, right? So I may be incredibly high item level, but I'm actually pretty vulnerable in a PvP sense, just because I don't have a stacked like verse set. Um, but our matches have been pretty balanced. We maybe go 1-1 more. We have like a 50-ish% win rate. As a group of people who don't do any PvP at all, just kind of coming in and seeing what it's like. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the greater problems in WoW. I see Nick in the chat said, I didn't think gear mattered in all modes. Like, isn't it possible to level through PvP? Yes, it is possible to level through PvP, but your gear does matter for that, that experience. I feel like one of the tough things about WoW is it is so many different games in one,
Yeah.
right? Like, it is simultaneously like a small group co-op game if you're playing Mythic Plus. It's a big co-op thing if you're playing raids. It's a competitive PvP game for small scale arenas, for large scale rated battlegrounds. It's pet battles, it's collecting, it's profession, you know what I mean? It's just like, man, I do not envy the WoW developers having to try to like balance through all of that, all of
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah, and I honestly think that like PvP's got to be one of the things that suffers a little bit more, like just because like I don't think that's the main draw of the game, right? Because like PvP is fun, but it's not particularly good, honestly, right? Like, if like I have fun playing PvP, but if I really wanted to play a PvP game, I'd go play Guilty Gear Strive, right? Or like
Yeah, I agree with you. I also don't. I just think that WoW itself is a game that. This is one of the things I like about WoW. WoW is a game about dedication as much as it is about skill. That's probably not true. It's more about skill than dedication. But part of the promise of a game like WoW is, you know what? If you put in the time, you're gonna get it. Like you're gonna get a reward that makes you more powerful. You do not have to be an incredibly skilled raider to get pretty good gear, right? If you want to end the patch at item level 205 and you're doing the world boss, you're doing whatever. If you put the time in, you'll get there. Whereas in other games, unless you're grind, you never get that essentially, right? And obviously the game also has ahead of the curve. It has KSM. It has higher item level gears for players who are performing at a higher item level or like at a higher level, right? So if you do put in the time to get good, there are like rewards for that as well. But I think in a way, my real argument is maybe that's okay. Part of the game is just about putting the time in, and if you're not willing to put the time in to get the gear at PvP, go find another game, right? Like it's not the final one. It's not the game for you.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Well, we actually have to go raid in 10 minutes, so
That's
we should
true.
probably wrap this up. If you'd like to email us about anything that you saw at E3 or any other things we talked about this podcast, feel free to email us at podcast@somedorsplaygames.com or somedorsplaygames@gmail.com. You can follow us at twitch.tv/somedorsplaygames. Rate and review us on podcast places. Comment on SoundCloud, anything you want. That's everything I have. Buddy, you have anything you want to promote?
I do have one thing I would like to promote, and I would recommend. As part of this got announced at Destructoid yesterday. There is a demo live now for Grime, which we have talked about a little bit.
Ooh.
Souls like Metroidvania. Grime doesn't have a release date. Like the game isn't done, but we did put a demo out there that is the first level up through the first boss. So I would definitely recommend picking it up and playing because it's fun and yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, with that, I will say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.